Hello and welcome to another English Express Matura stream. English stream, actually. My name is Chris, and today we're gonna talk about agreeing, disagreeing, and so on. As I've already mentioned in the introduction of the stream, today's stream is all about expressing an opinion, agreeing, partially agreeing, and disagreeing. A very interesting topic, especially because we're doing it not as frequently as the other topics, but especially for you, it's important to know how to disagree, agree with an opinion, with a statement, maybe a statement from the article, and yeah, knowing how to cope with it and knowing how to agree or disagree and phrase the sentence and so on. So today we're going to talk about several aspects actually. At first, as always, I'm going to show you when to express an opinion. So overall introduction in the topic of agreeing and disagreeing, and when to disagree or agree in the A-levels exam. Which doesn't mean that there is a restriction for you to not disagree or agree, of course. But of course, there are several phases, let's call them, in the exam where it is, of course, more important to disagree on something or agree on something. Then we're gonna move on to how to express an opinion, then how to agree or disagree, and how to partially agree. And then I'm gonna do a demonstration of a dialogue speaking skills. Basically, I just prepared a few statements and I tried to agree with them, maybe just to show you how it works, actually. So basically the two phases in the exam where it is important to disagree or agree or partially agree is task 2, which is the dialogue or the conversation, and the follow-up discussion. But somehow the follow-up discussion always sometimes even it's just a question, so where you don't have to disagree or agree. But in order to show you what I actually mean, I'm going to show you an exam. In this case, this exam is about advertising and social media marketing, structured as every other exam we're doing here, and exactly structured as the exam that you're will be doing in the A-level exam, in the oral exam. However, task 2 in this case is the role play dialogue or conversation, in which it is important that you know that it is a discussion. And that you should have your own ideas during the conversation, which it says in the instructions here, which leads to the topic of agreeing, since you have your own ideas and your own stance, so your own point of view, your own you have your different views of different opinions, different views of a specific topic or aspect, and so on. and therefore it's important to use your own ideas. And also you can, as I've already mentioned in the introduction, since you are asked to read an article, in this case it's about TV and product placement in TV, I think, just form your opinion, and during the preparation time, form your opinion of the article, and maybe think about with which statements you would agree and with which you wouldn't agree. And this makes it a lot more easier for the exam then, in the exam situation, in the conversation role play, to actually disagree or agree, or actually use the acquired phrases you have studied before, hopefully, to impress the examiner. What else in the follow-up discussions? Yeah. You take an active part in a short discussion about the topic. So an active part is always something where you kind of are involved in a discussion, where you have a certain stance, and therefore you need to know how to express yourself in this situation. And that's what we're doing today, actually, or what I'll show you in a few minutes. So basically, at first, I'm gonna just move a bit. We're gonna start with how to express an opinion. So since you have hopefully formed your own opinion, you have a certain stance about a topic or similar. Now it's important to think about how you can express an opinion. And in order to do so, of course, you can use phrases. For example, in my opinion, electric cars are the best invention, or the best invention that has been made so far, whatever. Or as far as I'm concerned, blah blah blah. From my point of view, according to me, and so on. There are a few expressions. Some of them are more formal, I think, especially when it comes to expressions like it is generally accepted. It's just maybe not as subjective as the others, since the first ones are all about yourself. Of course, it's your opinion, but generally accepted is just a broader phrase where you can use for expressing an opinion, but it's more general. Same goes with the last phrase. Generally, it is thought that blah blah blah, that what is generally thought that water boils at 100 degrees. And something like this. Everybody knows, actually. It's like a fact, actually. But if you start a sentence like this, you can also then state your own opinion, of course. Since you start out with, generally, it is thought that electric cars are more efficient or more economical friendly, but I think that concerning the production of the batteries and the whole cars, it isn't that eco-friendly. Yeah. Oh, they aren't that eco-friendly. Yeah. Okay, that's the general, basically the general things or general phrase that helps you to start off your opinion or stating your opinion. So now, as you have stated your opinion, it is important to agree with. It is important that you know how to phrase. If you want to agree to a statement, it might be a statement from the article, but it also might be a statement or a sentence that you just heard from the examiner. And then, of course, you have to agree or disagree. Otherwise, there won't be a discussion. And if there is no discussion, it is really difficult to have a kind of vivid and fluid conversation. Therefore, even if you do not agree, or if you do not disagree, sometimes it's harder, just pick one and think about what could be a statement where you agree or disagree. Just think about maybe you don't really have to be convinced of it. Of course, it's more it's easier for you if you're convinced of your opinion, of course, and if you really agree. But sometimes it is not possible, especially it gets more difficult, I think, when the examiner has the same opinion as you. Of course, you can add something, but of course, if there isn't a lot to add anymore, you just think about, you might also disagree or agree, of course. No, not true, I'm sorry. Disagree, of course, with the examiner, and then it's a conversation is much more likely, since then the examiner might ask you, but why, that's total nonsense what you're talking. Why should, I don't know. And then you can argue, and the examiner will also bring arguments that go with their statement, of course. In this case, agreeing can work with several phrases, and those are just a few of them. You could just start with, I completely agree with you. There's nothing to add. No, you shouldn't do that, actually. I completely agree with you, but I'd add something. I don't know. What do you want to add? Or I totally agree with you. That's the best thing that happened to us so far. Depends. Or absolutely, I'm so convinced of your opinion, and that's the best way to do it. Of course, I'm a bit exaggerating everything right now, but I think you see the point, what it's all about. I see exactly what you mean, which is a bit more formal, which you should use in the exam. Not you shouldn't use colloquial terms or more informal terms with "yo, dude, I agree" or something that doesn't work in the exam. Or I'd go along with that view that's super formal and super polite. Just think about the exam situation and which language you want to use, and you should use, of course. In this case, it's a formal language. It's not a conversation between a friend where you just use terms you wouldn't use in exam, of course. Or yeah, of course, that's a good point. Or also goes hand in hand with the expression absolutely. But now disagreeing, of course, is also important. Not only agreeing, and with disagreeing, in my experience, it's more easier. Even if you have to kind of come up with things you're not really convinced of, but you might have heard, so you can just use them for your benefit. And I'm afraid, for example, that this statement, this opinion, is not valid or isn't true or shouldn't be considered as good or something. Or I don't share your view, which is super nice phrase. Let's call it like this. I don't share your view. I think that elephants shouldn't be caged, for example. Or I disagree with you. I think it's the most easiest thing you could do. I disagree with you. Then of course you always have to explain why you disagree. It's no point in just saying that I disagree with you, and then waiting what happens. But that's always important, of course. But I think that's quite obvious. A really formal phrase also is if you use well, I see things rather differently than you, or I'm not sure I'd go along with that view. And of course the other ones, well, I don't quite agree with you. We don't seem to agree here, which is also quite formal. Use them for your benefit. It makes a good impression, I think, on the examiners if you use phrases like these, not only colloquial phrases. And then of course start to explain why you disagree or why you agree, or so partially agreeing is something a little bit different, of course, since you only partially agree. Therefore, you have to add something which you dislike about the statement you've read or just heard. So it's basically something that you agree with, but you want to add something since you think the painting is more complete. So pretty easy to start with. I agree, but blah blah blah. I agree, but I think we should focus on different aspects. Whatever you want to do. Depends on the topic, of course. I partially agree with you because I don't think that I don't know, that cars shouldn't be banned from a city, for example. Just an example. It's not my opinion, actually. I don't fully agree with you, which is almost the same, of course. I see your point, but, or I agree with this point of view, but, which phrase I really like is, sure, that's one way of looking at it. However, that's a very nice phrase actually. So it's not an aggressive confrontation. But of course, we're in an exam situation, and you shouldn't be, shouldn't start an argument with your examiner, I think. So keep it formal and simple, and then you're good to you're prepared for the exam actually. So just to demonstrate you, I've written out a few statements which are just statements. There is no stance of mine. So in an exam situation, for example, it can work if, for example, the examiner just mentions that electric cars are not the future of transportation. So possible answer for me, I take disagreeing, because it's a bit easier, I think. To say, I think that electric cars, or I disagree because blah blah blah, or I disagree, or no, I don't think so, because electric cars are, I don't know, considered the most efficient cars, which they aren't. If you consider the production, of course. But that's another different topic. Or public transportation should not be free, should not be for free. Of course, disagreeing makes it more easier. It should be free because it is a better way of transportation, especially if you consider if we continue, or if everyone continues driving their own car, a mostly empty car, almost everyday use by one person, it can lead to serious CO2 levels in the city, for example. Or parents should teach their children to live a healthy lifestyle. You can agree in this whatever you want. Yes, I do agree, since parents hold the responsibility for their children, and they have to raise them in a healthy manner, and so on. And they have to teach them how to eat healthy, and that sports is important, and so on. Another one is the amount of tourists that come to Innsbruck should be regulated or limited. In this case, you have the option that there are examples, like Venice, for example, or Amsterdam. They're discussing, I think, about it. And then you could, if you agree with it, you could use proof with the help of those examples. Or another things, obese people shouldn't pay higher taxes. So that's just an imaginary phrase. If you think they should pay higher taxes, you disagree, of course. If you think they shouldn't pay higher taxes, you agree. And think about the phrases we have just discussed, or I've just discussed. And then I think it's really easy to kind of develop or have a fluid conversation and it makes it more easier for you basically as the examinee. Yeah, that's basically it from this very hot day in Innsbruck, and I'd like to say goodbye and good night.